The good, the gold, is not out there. It's in the heart and what the heart's connected to. It's connected to the other world, the world of the spirit, what Carl Jung called the archetypal world. So one has to go down to connect with the gold that's needed. The person has got to learn to get down into the well, that golden well that the Iron John story has in it. The series of volumes that I've written and these lectures have been about my understanding of what the great code is in the self, what our potentials are, and a lot of things that I think help develop the capacity to hold those energies without getting crazy. It's not enough just to put your finger down into the fountain, like the boy did in the story, because if you just put your finger down into the fountain, you get that gold stuff on you, and you don't know what to do with it. It works like a contagion, a taboo. In other words, if you get in touch with your gold, your God energy, your God self energy, and you have not worked to develop a vessel, a cup, to hold that in, if you have not been doing the work you need to here's the psychoanalytic word used today, if you have not worked on your microstructuralization, when you get in touch with your gold, you will become psychotic. And if you do not become psychotic, you will not be psychotic because you will have become an addict. Addiction is a ritual process, pseudo-quasi-ritual process. The body knows to do ritual, whether you know what it's doing or not. So if I don't have any spiritual vessels my microstructures to contain my gold energy, and I get my finger into the gold, say you're an addict, you got your finger into the lover gold, and then you became an addict to contain it. Say, boy, that's a hellacious ritual. But it is a ritual. Look at it very carefully. It's a method of having all sorts of things you do regularly to contain this energy. One of my students I really loved was a young man named Terry. He was a former cocaine addict and works a lot with addicts in Chicago in the steel mills. And one of the things he taught me was about all of the ritual of cocaine addiction. And in my classes, I have him come and he clears the table and he sets up the altar. He's still got his lover. He lovingly caresses all of the instruments. And so my students and I have been talking about ritual, and so then they can see what's happening. It's the way in which the addict contains this. All I'm telling you that for is that you got to understand that the first task is going down in here, down through the Temple of Doom. You got to get down there to where that treasure is. But a part of that process is working on sculpting your cups that you can hold that gold. So that, now here again, here's the psychoanalytic take on this. So that when you're in touch with it, you don't become overstimulated. Now see, what you got to really get a handle on, when you're in touch with your God self, when you're in touch with that part that's in touch with the spirits in the other world, what Malidoma say? There's energy in that. What does psychoanalysis today teach us that the old people always knew? You get too much of that, it's dangerous. You've got to have vessels to contain it. And that's what all the interest in ritual was and will be again. So the first thing to do is know you got to go down there. You start working on it, and you take on just as much gold as you can stand that does not destroy you and make you crazy. It does not possess you. And for example, all that warrior gold that's in you, all of your aggression that's been cursed and not blessed, that has got to be brought online in your soul slowly.
So by the pearl, you're not talking about what people usually say is a spiritual energy that you need to get to. You're talking about warrior energy, king energy.
That is spiritual energy in different forms. These tribal peoples all knew this stuff. And they knew that you did, that what you connect with is very specific. And there are specific ritual processes involved in connecting with each of these energies, each of these initiations. And so when you're getting in touch with your rage and you're learning to contain it, what is that rage? It's warrior gold ore. You have got to put it in a refiner's fire. You've got to contain it and heat it up until gold comes out of the gold ore. It takes a lot of containment and a lot of heat, but that is what the work that you do, inner work you do in ritual groups with men, and the work you do here together, that is alchemy. But the point of it is that this is, as the self-psychologists say, microstructuralization, baby steps. Baby steps. All of this building of the pyramid of yourself is block by block. And it requires helpers, community helpers to help you do this. So
it's amazing, because when I was like 35 years old, the only possibility was a therapist.
That's right.
Who wasn't anywhere around where I lived anyway.
That's right.
But the idea of a helper's out of the question.
That's
I've
right.
heard of it.
That's right. And the problem is, so many of the therapies, so many of the psychologies, I call them dwarf psychologies. Because they do not understand about this gold, they pathologize it. And if you get in touch with the great self in you, with all this fountain of gold in you, they pathologize you and diagnose you. As one young man said to me out in Aspen, I'm talking about this same stuff, and he says, Robert, I was just recently told that I'm a narcissistic personality disorder. Are you telling me that some of these things that I am are not all pathological? See? And I said, thank you for making my lecture, Because what they do is pathologize this spiritual God, divine energy that is flowing in your veins. See, they pathologize that. And they try to cure you by making you ordinary. And that is a tragic thing. I cannot tell you how sad that makes me. I cannot tell you, if you look at the larger picture we're facing, how tragic this is. Because ordinary people will not make it through this time. See, ordinary ones. The ones that are not connected with anything great. They're not going to have the spiritual resources to survive. And so this is the first important task, and just to face, and not in a romantic way, face the fact that going down with the help of other men into the spiritual resources of your tribe, and I hope of at least one other tribe. At least one. And what I love to see in men's groups around the country is the way in which different men will steward different tribal traditions and then bring them as offerings. This is the model I think we have to see for the future. We see a stewarding of the treasure of our tribe and a bringing it as an offering to this larger community. This not only can be done, in contradiction to what I was told, it is being done. So anyway, that is an enormous piece. Why is that so important in the context of the theme of this conference? Because if you are not connected through down into the center, that is in your soul, connecting you to what Robert has called the other world. If you're not connected with that, your envy cannot be healed. The only cure for this sense of deprivation is through that connection. Carl Jung built his entire system of thought on that assumption. Here's the way he said it, and I just translated it. He said, all healing comes through the numinous, which means the encounter with the sacred. The sacred. All healing comes through the encounter with the sacred. Okay, so The antidote is not something you can steal from somebody else. It will not help to destroy everybody else. It will not help to heap guilt upon everybody else. What helps is going down and connecting with that fountain of gold that is within and connected to, as Maladoma would say, to the spirit world. So that is the key thing, and we just have to understand that that is not separate from this whole idea of the community. Because the key is this: without people who feel that they are participating in fullness, you see, the Gnostics had this word, pleroma. It means fullness. And their understanding of initiation, who was the Gnostic initiate? The one who knows. That's the person who is connected with fullness. And once you're connected with pleroma, you don't have that zero-sum game approach to life anymore. You're not living scarcity anymore. Because this hatred and envy in us and in other people is based on a theory of scarcity. I said that yesterday. You've got the good, I don't. You shine, I could never shine. What's to cure that? Can you say anything to me to cure that? Absolutely not. That is why this inner work that you do, and anybody that shames you about your inner work, they just don't understand this stuff. They don't understand that you're trying to connect with fullness so that the generativity and generosity can come forth out of you for the world. All these tribal traditions had a way of talking about that. So, building that temple. Why do you have to build the temple? Because there's got to be a transformer in there, or you get fried. And let me tell you how you can know how well you're doing with your transformers. Simple. How much shame are you carrying? Because just like in that Iron John story, when a person has not got their initiation on the line, touches the gold, it gets on them, gets on their hair, you know, then you have to wear your cap so nobody can see your golden hair. So in other words, if you're hiding, if you feel like, you know, you're just shy and you're hiding and you don't have anything to offer, that very shame experience is a compensation. It's a way of handling your knowledge inside that you're in touch with the gold and you don't know what to do. And I'm not just, this is not just my idea. I have to tell you, there's a wonderful book by a guy by the name of Morrison, and it's called Shame, the Underside of Narcissism. And the whole point is that underneath shame is what they call, in their Freudian language, untransmuted and internalized grandiosity. Now,
I'll say it that way again.
Okay, I want to say it that way again, and I'll translate it. Untransmuted and internalized grandiosity. In other words, gold energy that I don't have any vessels for.
Robert, you asked me to tell you when it was finished.
Okay, good. Now, so this going down that we do is not about being private. It's not about being individualistic. It's not about commodification of the spirit. It's based on an ancient understanding that until you connect with fullness, until you connect with fountains of blessing, this hurt cannot be healed. When you connect with that and you form a community that understands this, like we have here, where we understand that if you get blessed, that doesn't mean I'm less blessed. The spiritual foundation for what we have to do in the world is laid. Another way to talk about that, you claim your birthright. You claim that birthright of your 2 million year old at least human self. You claim that gold that's been accumulated through all the sacrifices of all those people and all those primates through time. You claim that. You become a part of a royal household, myths say. So those abandoned children out there disconnected from their gold get reunited with it. And they claim their participation in a royal household. Now that is what we've got to be clear about. All that language about the princess and the prince returning home, all that talk about Ulysses returning from exile, all those myths about the return of the king, all that stuff is about coming back into your birthright. The birthright, the blessing, is large enough for all. That's the different word. There is plenty here. And so that homecoming, see, there's no accident that the greatest philosophers and a lot of these spiritual teachers talk about what we're talking about here is homecoming. Where are you coming home to? You're coming home to the royal house, where your birthright is claimed. You're not ashamed of it anymore. You are not living in your shame and out of your shame. See, what we got to create is people who are shameless for the right reasons. See, that was in all these myths. The Christian myth is eaten up with it. The Christians don't understand it. They do not understand that this is not a tribe. This is the inclusive great community. But that is what I just want to reemphasize this. We have to go down into that fountain where there is enough. Once you touch that place in your soul which understands enough, you will be able to be a generative man.
Could you talk a little bit about king energy that's been buried in the way the warrior energy has been buried?
Yeah. Well, that he puts his finger right on it. That king energy is that's the space of generativity. That is that servant leadership part of a man. It's the part of a man that behind the scenes, like so many of these guys, behind the scenes take care of us here. But don't really expect a lot in return. It's that servant leadership. Without that, human society never has been able to function. And it's this king part of ourselves that's so wounded now.
How can a really shamed man find that gold in there? How can he do that?
Find ways to be a servant leader in your community. When you do the smallest, there's somebody that said, inasmuch as ye have done it unto the least of these, you have done it unto me. That is the Lord of the Four Quarters, the mythic Lord of the Four Quarters speaking. In other words, it is the smallest act of servant leadership that is your king. And that's why sacrifice, a lot of people mix up sacrifice and masochism. See, masochism is something you don't know what you're doing or why. Sacrifice and servant leadership, you're clear what you're doing, you know why you're doing it, and you feel that it is necessary, and it is what a generative man does. What does a generative man do? Very simple. He does what is necessary. And there's a good book called just Servant Leadership, and it describes this stuff. Greenleaf. Getting down into these things, each one of these aspects, in my view, of the male soul, all of these four great trees, the Mescalero Apache would say. Each one of them, you've got to get down, you've got to find a way to embody that stuff, incarnate it in yourself. Your body, it's like, this is what's behind all that mythology in Christianity. Your body is a vessel for incarnation of these things. And you can't just talk to somebody about your warrior and your warrior responsibilities. It's not a matter of just talk. It's a matter of finding a way that you become one who protects those who cannot protect themselves. And it's a way in which you find a way to be prepared to be a protector, and where you can connect with that gold courage that's in you. It's in there. That's part of your heritage, your 2 million-year-old heritage. It's in there. You may think you're a coward, but you just not touched that part of the well. It's important to figure out which of these golden things you're most comfortable with. One has to figure out where they're weakest. So you got to figure out where that is and start working on connecting with that part of yourself. There is a behavioral set of things that you can involve yourself in that will strengthen you in each of these grandfathers. And so in warrior stuff, very simple thing is to get yourself involved in martial arts. And lover stuff is to do art. It's important to not try to become whole in one quadrant. I spent 45 years trying to become whole in the magician. And all I did was accumulate degrees. You know, my theory is that men and women have asymmetrical trajectories toward wholeness. That men get into the lover powerfully in midlife, and women get into the warrior powerfully in midlife, typically. And cross-cultural test results of both genders support the model I've been working on. And it shows that women get more assertive in the second half of life, and men get more passive. And what it's like this: if you go through the first part of your life, but you've never gotten your warrior online, so you don't have your aggression blessed, and then you get into that lover place, you just dissolve into jelly. And you lose what little warrior you ever had. And you become depressive and addictive. Of course, that's what I say. You get possessed by the lover. And if you don't understand that the task is wholeness, then you will not understand that as an older man, you must not disavow your warrior side. And if you're a guy like me who didn't develop it in the first half of your life, you have a responsibility to develop it in the second half. You know? So wholeness, you got to hold this stuff together. And women are forgetting. They think they did their lover. You know, I did my lover piece. Now to hell with that. I see so many men whose wives are abandoning them for the world.
So and women are talking almost in these oppositional terms, like I've done the lover.
I've done it.
What would be a better attitude of hers?
Well, but see now we've got to watch this too, because men, you know, well, I was really a son of a bitch first half of my life, you know, boy, I used to kick ass now, you know, and now I've gotten to midlife and I've discovered poetry, and I've given up all that warrior shit. See, that's the same thing in reverse. And what we've got to understand and help men and women to understand is that the thing is wholeness, folks. And you must not leave behind the things you learned in the first half of your life. Those have to be brought and stewarded for the community. Why is it that the men of the world are declaring bankruptcy with regard to their responsibilities to the community, and especially to the young men? It's because they've gone into this midlife thing, they've gotten their lover, and then they just kind of pour it out all over the floor. And then their little husband molds, and then their wives scrape it up, you know, and they pour it in the golf cart. You know? And I'm deadly serious about this shit. I mean, we older men are in a worldwide crisis. And this, it would be bad, it would be tragic enough if it was only them, if it was only those older men that were suffering. But the bad news is that without those older men not declaring bankruptcy, and if they don't sign on as grandfathers in a forest of kings, if they don't sign on as a forest of kings, we haven't got a snowball's chance in hell for a future. And with that, Robert, I'll say thank you.